Hello, this is Deborah Clay, fiction author and podcaster, and this is Castaway Books. Each week I ask an author to tell me about the books that have influenced their lives and inspired their writing. This week's guest is Anka Troitsky. Hello, Anka. It's so lovely to have you join me on my island. And I'm not actually on my island today, am I? Because I haven't got the picture behind me, but you are zooming in from the universe because you write science fiction.
That's right. That's my place of residence.
We had a bit of a problem with my computer, so we've changed the setting. So this is why I'm not got my island behind me. But I promise you will go onto the Castaway Island with your books. So
Thank you.
Perhaps we should make it what you'd take with you if you were going to the moon.
Well, yeah, that's another island in the universe.
It is indeed. So I know Anka because we both go to Writing Buddies in Chelmsford, and it's so wonderful, the writing community in person and online, because you meet so many new people. And I've got one of your books, and I'm not a sci-fi fan, but I am a fan of yours because you write so beautifully. So welcome.
Oh, thank you. I try. Considering English is not my first language, I think it's my very special achievement.
Well, you do extremely well. So
thank you.
Tell us about your first book.
Well, my very first book actually was written in Russian language, and it was a little mystery murder story. It was investigation based on my experience working as a police and court interpreter. I was going to police station until I start feeling so comfortable there. And I started to notice that every time I get called to interpret for somebody who can't speak English language, there's always adventure. There's always interesting people to meet. And at some point, I put it all into one story, changing names and places, creating fiction characters. And I wrote it, I finished it, and I put it in the bottom drawer and forgot about that. So that's probably what happened to most of the first books. And when I wanted to write science fiction, I wanted to start straight in English. And it's happened during the COVID because we all had a little bit of extra time at home. So that's when the first book was born. And it's about people who are in the future integrating with technology.
Excellent. Well, there's a little bit about the books you write. Now about the books you're going to take on the island with you or to the moon with you. Which is your first book choice?
Well, it's books that, if I'm going to island with only 5 books, it has to be books that you can read again and again and again and still enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a few books like this in my life, but to select few was tough. Although some of them are kind of in series anyway, so that's extra bonus. So the first book is something that takes me back to my childhood and to my father who died during the COVID pandemic. And he's the one who actually got me on the science fiction and on reading together. He was a scientist himself. He was a romantic person. And he first introduced me to the books of French writer Jules Verne and said, I feel so jealous that you are still to read it first time, because for him that time was already gone. And he said, like, I envy you because you still will read it first time and you will experience what I experienced and loved so much about it. Mm-hmm. And yes, it was a big breakthrough, because what we used to read back home at school was a school program classics like Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, all these boring, outdated stories. To read something which is going also to 19th century, but about Victorian time, when progress and science was so much with a buzz, was very, very refreshing. And I loved those stories because every story has a scientist in it. Did you notice? They have a group of heroes, and there will be always somebody who is good at something.
And that was it includes 1,000 Leagues Under the Sea and Around the World in 80 Days that people might have heard of.
Well, absolutely. The most famous ones. There is a series of all those traveling extraordinary. I think it's called Extraordinary The Voyages
Voyages
Extraordinaire. That's it.
Extraordinaire.
Voyages Extraordinaire. That's it. And Treasure Island, and they're all kind of related to each other. And not Treasure Island, the Mysterious Island
Mm.
was the one. And even the little boy there, even the boy in the character is good at biology, and everybody is good at something. And my admiration for most of the people, I absolutely like person if this person is professionally really good at something, really
So
good at
how,
what they're doing.
so how old were you when you were reading these books?
Probably about 10, 12.
Mhm.
And that's what's cool about it, because you read it when you're young, and then you read it 5 years later, and it's completely picking up on the different things. When
Mm.
you read it in 20, you suddenly fall in love with one of the characters. When you
Mm.
read it at 40, you suddenly have this nostalgic feelings, and you're revisiting places and become a child again. That's
It,
what's so special about books like that.
I think so. You can read a book, as you say, at different stages in your life, and you identify with different characters and have a different perspective.
Yeah,
Definitely.
well, it's lots of people said that when they read something like Anna Karenina, for instance, when they are in their very early ages, they will understand more Kitty, and when they're at their 30s and 40s, they suddenly understand what Anna was about.
That's funny you saying that, because that came to mind as you said that, because I had a friend years ago who said exactly that about that same book and film.
Ah,
She said
yeah,
exactly the same thing. And it was Anna Karenina. I can't say it,
Anna
Anna.
Karenina. Yeah.
Yeah. And she said exactly the same thing, that she had different feelings about her situation from when she was young and then when she was older and watched it. Mm.
Yeah, you
Amazing.
suddenly don't judge her anymore. You suddenly understand
Yes.
why she did what she did. Things like this. It's not as if I approve, of course, but you know,
No, but you have come to it with different perspective.
yeah.
So you were reading about scientists when you were 10, 12. Did you have aspirations to become a scientist yourself? Is that the route you took?
Yeah, mainly because my dad was a scientist and he got me that love for science and obviously books as well. The world is an ocean of unknown, and you can spend lifetime exploring it and finding new things and making it useful, as you know, for people. And it will never end. It's one particular discipline that will never be complete. It's always will be something new to explore, something new
Mm,
to cover and invent, etc.
amazing. And your books are wonderful themselves, writing about science. Okay, so on to your second book choice when you were in your teen years.
Yes, that's when I started interested actually science fiction at that point. If the Victorian adventures books are all about traveling and sciences has very, let's say, common view there. It doesn't go deep into things much. Science fiction of two brothers who used to create the masterpieces during the 60s, 70s. They called Arkady and Boris Strugatsky. They not only have an amazing sense of humor, they also have understanding of science fiction from the point of view of philosophy. They philosophize. They using science fictional images to illustrate the ideas and premonitions.
Mhm.
What happening now in the world um, shocks me because they predicted some of it so clearly that sometimes just have to go back and read these books and like, how did you know? How did you know this what will happen? And I'm not into mysticism and all this voodoo premonitions and stuff like that. They just basically knew how people work.
Mm,
They could predict how the particular society with the particular roots and particular way of development will end up where we are now.
mm, mm.
And that is nothing mystical about it. It's a true science.
An example of that is also around the pandemic. There were
Mm.
films and books predicting the pandemic is almost exactly as it was. And
Well,
yet,
there is a consistency, isn't it? There's a consistency and a pattern. And if you follow it cleverly, if you are paying attention to details, you probably have a very good chance to get spot on.
which is why I can see science fiction as a genre to read must be so fascinating, because if it's things are written by scientists, you're perhaps getting a glimpse of what the future really could be like.
Well, they did predicted quite a few things, didn't they? Like even if you take the popular programs that the sci-fi series that everybody's enjoying, like Star Trek, um, of course it's full of scientific nonsense, like something which is like completely address to the people and saying like, don't think about it. We can travel with that speed. We can do these things. We can find a truck with in the space floating around with still ignition working and things like that. That's full of rubbish like this. But they did predict it, that people would be able to communicate with a tiny little device. The people would be able to create a new genetic modifications in the species and everything. That some of those things was just touched very lightly, and somebody picked up the idea and developed it, and now we're looking at certain things that happen. And so, how many other things will happen in through life? You can only wonder.
So let's go on to your third book choice. Because that one, just tell me what that second choice was again. Did you actually call out what it was? Monday starts on Saturday was your.
Yeah, that's a book written by these two people, the two brothers, and that is amazing. I'll give you one example. What's there that is actually very much a presentation of the biggest evil of the world right now today. You know what I'm talking about? They basically a scientist there created a creature, a homunculus, basically synthetic a person who had only one function programmed, is to take as much valuable things as possible. And his crazy idea was that if he will get satisfied with the material goods and values, he will be interested in the spiritual and aesthetics and etc. And guess what? No, this person was like a void, like a black hole, sucking in everything that it can reach, all the goods, robbing other people from goods, taking everything that is close, and not interested in anything else but taking, and you just wonder like, when would you have enough? And that image, that tiny little a joke, almost prank in the book, is now exists in the real life. Maybe in a synthetic life form, but definitely with a similar behavior.
Sad.
Yeah.
But will we get to the point where we are looking for more spiritual fulfillment and move away from the materialistic?
Well, I immediately think about Maslow pyramid. So, and if you think about it, yeah, there is a basic needs. There is a needs that is a little bit step up into the things like knowledge and curiosity and art, but then there's always the top. And what people don't understand, you can reach the top, but you cannot stay there. You have to always drop back in, because you cannot feel euphoria all the time. Impossible. Because at some point, let's say, for instance, I won a competition in writing. You have fantastic euphoria for a day or two, for a week. You can be feeling like, yeah. And next day you just think like, okay, what can I do next? And you go down again to the point where you just have to work hard, and you have to find dreams, and you have to fulfill your dreams and keep working and keep progressing, keep learning, getting more information, getting more skills, getting more knowledge, so that you hit the top again one day.
Yeah.
And that's what makes me happy. I don't know about other people, as you said, the progress, sometimes the actual journey is more enjoyable than destination.
I always say to people, especially creatives, that, because you go for that high, you think, as you say, you get published, win a competition, something wonderful happens. But the highs or the lows, and the worst thing that can happen to you, are like little blips up, blips down. It's that steady rhythm without the blips that's our everyday life, and making that as good as it
People
can be.
constantly moving up and down in that pyramid, and that's normal. That's exactly what life is about, because one day you have a sad day, one day you got sick and you suddenly got so ill and you dropped all the way down, and now your comfort and your well-being is more important than the artwork and the most beautiful things to find out. And until you get better, you can't think of those things. So that kind of up and down things is probably the most normal thing.
Make your normal life a good life.
Yeah. All you have to do is just keep moving, because if you stop, you fall behind.
Yeah. Okay, so on to your third book choice. And this is about your late 20s, early 30s. What's the book choice there?
Well, that was a time when I was mainly reading crime investigations. It was a big boom of all those detective stories and the murder, and there was a series on the TV. I was already in England. I was in my 30s, getting closer to 40s, when I discovered that I do have first nostalgic feeling about places where my family originated from, West Siberia, Krasnoyarsk, with those wonderful forests and rivers that used to be so clean in the past, that what my dad said, that you can drink from it. And Viktor Astafyev, who actually died reasonably recently, in 2001, he's a public figure and a very controversial author, but his novels, and one book that I still have on my shelf is called the Stara Dub, which is the Old Oak. It's a place. And then there's 3 novels there. One of them, the Tsarfish, is my favorite. The descriptions of those lands and the way the people lived there, how they used to go fishing, how they used to drink vodka, how they used to dream, fight, talk, separating themselves from everything else that was happening in the country, being so distant, is a little island, if you like, of a completely different mentality, completely different existence. And I know if I will go there now, I will not see it. It's all gone,
Sad.
changed, disappeared. It's get corrupted that you can't drink from River Yenisei anymore. And the town doesn't have those wooden made cottages anymore. It's all different. That's why I will never go there. I can
Oh,
always pick up that book and I
mm.
can read it and revisit those places.
That's the lovely thing about books. They can take us back in place and time. And if it stimulates memories, you can feel like you're there. It's lovely.
Yeah.
So
So that's why I keep it.
how old were you when you came to England, and have you gone back very much?
Well, I was so young. I was only 25. Which means most of my life I've been here, because it like almost 31, 32 years I've been around here, and all in Essex mainly. Yeah. Lovely place of England. In fact, my favorite, I think. Books is something that is very difficult to bring with you if you're migrating, because they're heavy. Now you can have them all in one little library in a chip, but back then it was difficult. So those I do have and I brought with me, they are truly treasures to me. The book number 2, book number 3, they are definitely here, even though that the first book, Jules Verne, now I'm enjoying in English.
It's good.
I just wish I could enjoy them in French, but I don't know the language.
I looked for the link for this third book choice on Amazon, because I like to put them in the show notes, but I couldn't find it on there at all. So if you
I might
find
be able to find it and send it over here.
that'd be lovely. Okay, so let's go on to your 4th choice.
4th choice and also the 5th one, they kind of happened roughly at the same time. It was when I consider myself finally grown up, which is 40 plus. That's when I actually started to be a little bit more self-aware and more people-aware. I started to study psychology and started philosophy, because I wanted to find my grounds. I had so much separation from my old world. Soviet Union doesn't exist, and to be honest, I'm glad. But it will be a long time before people will be feeling here that level of Maslow pyramid, when they actually would be curious about what's other people work, how they mind work. There are not, I'm not talking about for all 100% population, but I'm so glad that I have access here to that information, that kind of study. So Ayn Rand, the fountainhead, is an amazing illustration of philosophy objectivism. I'm not big fan. There's lots of holes and lots of black spots and white spots that I disagree with, and there's lots of thinking needs to be done. But it's an illustration of what people can be, not what they are. And that's also pushes me, to certain topics I raise in my science fiction books, like what we used to be wasn't particularly great. What we are now, better. But what we can be, what we can become in the future as a humans, as a species, is so important. Would be so good if some of your idea of people, how people should value themselves and how people should value each other and the world they live in, is something that would make a goal. Some people might say this is unachievable, People like this are not particularly interesting. They're boring. Well, of course they're boring. As a characters, they are boring because they're not meant to be real people. They're meant to be illustrating a particular trait.
Mm-hmm.
And she doesn't waste time on anything else. She's not telling us what they have for dinner or what movies they like to watch.
Mm.
She's giving us their perspective on life, their values, their virtues, how they achieve something. And the quotes there, they become my guide in life.
Mm.
For instance, I can easily say now when I'm getting stuck with a books promotion, I can say, slightly changing one of the characters' words, that I don't write to have readers. I need readers so I can write.
Ah, lovely. Yeah, it's true. It's absolutely true. I always say creation is a two-way process. You know, when people get balk at the idea of marketing, I say, well, it's not about selling yourself. It's about having that two-way process and interaction with somebody who receives your creation, the reader, because you need their feedback in order to write, don't you? To know that someone's receiving it and to know it's
Absolutely.
moved someone. Mm.
I know for sure that like every reasonable author can tell that you cannot satisfy everybody. You cannot write a book that everybody will love. It's impossible. But there will be somebody who will love it completely. And if there is somebody who hates it, that's also achievement if you
It
think
is, you
about
still
it. You
touch them.
created emotion.
Absolutely, which is like all art, isn't it? You're there to create a response. So this author, Anne Rand,
Ayn Rand,
Anne
yeah.
Rand, has that influenced your writing at all? You know, how you write your science fiction?
No, as a writer, I don't think she was particularly good from my point of view. Her books have being edited by professionals, obviously, and she's also came from Russia a long time ago. She was a Jewish immigrant who went to America, and she was also writing in English, which is not her first language. That kind of did push me a little bit, saying like, yeah, it is possible. But I also know that a great value of editors who would make it digestible, who would turn it into the better shape. But what she was writing about as a literature is not very good, is not very rich. As an illustration of philosophy, almost like a manifest, if you like, as a guidance to the certain way of standing on a certain principle or being consistent on a certain convictions. That's the value for me. So it didn't influence me as a writer. It's definitely influenced me as a person.
Right, right. Okay, because in your books, you're also exploring how people might behave in different situations. You're bringing together your scientific background and your interest in psychology and philosophy to explore behaviors in different settings. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's an echo there, because if you will take one of the books and read it, the title, Object and Vist, especially in my language, it will sound like objectivist, objectivist.
Uh-huh.
And Ayn Rand's philosophy is called objectivism. Now, that's how the book meant to start, but it did evolve. It's become something completely different. And even though that I'm trying to connect those qualities, it wouldn't be down to her books. It will
No.
be more down to her philosophy, her ideas that shaped me up, and that's how I shape up my characters.
Okay, so on to book number 5.
It's been quite a few years now since Terry Pratchett left us. And God, I wish I could meet him. And this is one person I probably would take with me to the island
Oh,
to talk to,
well,
because
maybe you can in your science fiction world.
in my science fiction world, definitely. You actually just gave me a good idea. I love all his books, even those he actually wrote for children. And one of the best probably would be Nation. But talking about my personal choice, what I would put on my bookshelf, it will be his Discworld, the whole series, but specifically the ones about witches. Because there's a different lines, and all the fans of Terry Pratchett know that there is a line about ethics and morality, which is the Night Watch, the police stories of Commander Vane. There's a one about politics and economy, which is veterinary and his little experiments with the former criminals. There's even a book which touched upon the gender issues. There is a series of groups about science, which is Unseen University Line and Wizards. But witches, it's about psychology, but he doesn't call it psychology. He's using the term from Mistress Weatherwax called headology. And she shocked me. I want to be her when I'm 90 years old. She's a wonderful person, so wise, so consistent, so precise. Was a few times in my life when I actually had to reread particular paragraph from one of the books with her. To be honest, I don't remember which one of which books is that, but she actually grabbed. The magic doesn't work if there's iron, so iron is against magic. But she still grabbed the sword, and it didn't hurt her. The iron sword, and everybody was like, "How did you manage that? How did you manage that? How that it didn't hurt?" Only when she was alone in her cottage, after she done cleaning up, she get the bowl of water and bandages, and that's when she allowed herself to get that pain, to get that wound, so that she can treat it. That was the right time. And for me, it's important. You can get hurt so many times when you go through life. So many bad things can happen to you. But when you can choose, when do you react to it? When you deal with it, it's amazing control. You don't, some people immediately have a reaction straight away. They break, they have nervous breakdowns, they cry, they scream of pain. But when you could be so strong and so wise, magic or not, doesn't matter, when you can choose when you're going to deal with it, when there's nobody to hear you scream. That's Mistress Weatherwax for me. And that's still it in his, I don't know, his female touch maybe. Wonderful, wonderful world he created. But you said that I should take just one book, just one book name. That will be Science of Discworld. Science of the Discworld. Again, it's 3 books or even 4, I think, if I remember correctly. He wrote it with, but it's like a sequels. He wrote it with the help of scientists. And it's definitely something that I did not teach children in the school when I was a science teacher. This is something that is going so beyond the textbooks, and yet it's so much more interesting that I think that's how we should teach children science, not by the science textbooks, but the Science of the Discworld by Terry Pratchett.
Brilliant. Brilliant. You've making me interested in science and science fiction, which I haven't been.
Every reasonable person should be interested in science. Otherwise, how do you know how your body works? How do you know how your cooking works?
I'm okay on biology. I trained in medicine and everything.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Occupational therapist, but yeah, but I wouldn't consider myself a scientist, not like you. So you taught science. Are you still working, or are you retired from the day job and just writing?
I stopped teaching science. I was in one of the Essex schools, senior schools, for 17 years. And I stopped in 2017 for 2 reasons. One of them, my father got ill and I needed to look after him. And the second reason is I'm not particularly happy with what was happening in the education in this country. I started to feel more and more in the last probably 7-8 years of my working there, is that it's not about teaching anymore. Satisfying Ofsted, and I just felt like I cannot do my job anymore. I'm not as good as I used to be. So, and you know, I do care about how good you are at your job, and I couldn't be good at my job anymore, so I had to go.
It's a shame. So many good teachers have left because of the Ofsted and curriculum.
Pretty much the same reason, yes.
Yeah, it's a shame. Great loss. Anyway, we're nearing the end, so I have to ask you now which luxury you would take with you on the island.
I'm a massive gamer. I'm a massive gamer. I love playing Xbox and PlayStation. And if I could take it with the internet as well, I could play online with my friends. Some of them are young, some of them are in their 80s, but they are playing. So this is the one thing that I sometimes like to go into. It gives me such, sometimes I play the game and suddenly I have idea about next story. Sometimes I play the game because I just want to go into the different world and live different life. And somebody said once, not to me, to somebody else, why you keep playing? You don't have life of your own? And the answer was amazing. I don't play because I don't have a life. I just like to have many lives.
Yes, I love that. I love that.
This is
Oh,
why I play. I'm not crazy. I don't play hours and hours and hours. I give myself a couple hours here and there on the weekends especially if I'm not feeling well and I'm useless and everything else, I'll go and live a different life.
okay. Well, don't go away completely. We'll say goodbye to you here, but stay on to talk to me. Thank you so much, Anka, for sharing with us your choices to take away. I won't say to the island this time because it's not here. Take with you to the moon because you're sitting in a beautiful setting with the universe behind you. So,
Oh, can I take it further? Can I take it to my planets that I've created?
yes,
Well, actually, I didn't
absolutely.
create it. That planet does exist, and
Yes,
it's one of the objects of Kepler's interest. It's a Kepler's object of interest. That's how they call them, because potentially they could sustain life. And I did took one of those planets and I've made it full of life. And that's where people are purple, and that's where I'm going.
excellent. Take it with you. So
Thank
goodbye
you.
for now.
Thank you very much for talking to me.